Republican Conference, John Thune. Hey, John.
Hey, Carl. And you know, the interesting thing about this president is that he's going to have disagreements with his own party as well as the other party. We're going to talk about that with John Thune, chair of the Republican Conference. First of all, congratulations on being reelected, and congrats for surviving that squeaker in South Dakota. I see you got just barely 72% of the vote.
Well, you know, sometimes better to be lucky than good, right?
Yeah. Exactly. It was only a month ago, things changed so fast, that you called on Donald Trump to withdraw from the race and let Mike Pence be the Republican nominee. Are you glad he didn't?
Well, that's behind us. It was a painful and difficult campaign for a lot of us. But, you know, he's now our Republican or president-elect, and we're looking forward to working with him. So, you know, the campaigns are hard, and sometimes, you know, it can be a difficult and tumultuous process to get through it, and this one certainly was no exception. But now that it's over, I think everybody's ready to move on and see what we can get done together.
What is your observation of the transition so far? You may have seen that your former House colleague, Mike Rogers, was ousted from the transition. He said last night that there's some confusion about the chain of command, and there have been purges of people tied to Chris Christie, that sort of thing. Does that trouble you?
Well, I mean, I think that any transition, and I know you've covered them in the past, are, you know, they're complicated. You got a lot of people who are trying to do a lot in a very short period of time, positions to fill. It really is like taking, you know, water from a fire hose. And I think that this transition is certainly no exception to that. I think they'll find their way. And I think they're working.
Does this feel like a normal transition to you?
I think I think transitions tend to be kind of messy. If you look throughout history, I think that's just the nature of the beast. So they'll get through it, and they've made some you know, good appointments. There have been some stories about people who have left, but they continue, I think, to move forward. And I expect we'll hear a lot of names for cabinet secretaries here in the near future.
Tell me what you think you Republicans in Congress, the House and Senate, can do with President Trump next January fast.
Well, I think that there are a number of things, obviously, he can do just by sort of executive order. He can reverse a lot of the executive actions of the current administration, which I think will be a welcome relief to a lot of people around the country. So the regulatory area, for sure. You know, we're going to be hopping on very quickly, repealing Obamacare, something that we committed to do and something that he's committed to do.
Do you agree with him that popular portions of Obamacare should be retained? And if so, since those are tied to the unpopular parts, how do you do that?
Well, I think there are features of it that will be retained. You know, the pre-existing condition, the ban on, you know, denying people coverage for pre-existing conditions is something that we all agree on. I do think that we have a template for this because we did it a couple of years ago. We sent President Obama a repeal bill, and we used the budget reconciliation process in order to do that, which allows us to do it at a 51-vote threshold. And we figured out what was doable under that type of a scenario. And so we were able to repeal the individual mandate, the employer mandate, a lot of the taxes. There may be some things that, you know, obviously we can't do, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. We're working with the new administration.
Do you support, and will this Congress support, building a border wall and deporting the 11 million people who are here without documentation?
Deportation, no. I mean, I don't think that there's not support for that across the board like that in the way you're suggesting in Congress. I do think that border security will be a high priority, and I think the wall will be a component of that. Now, whether that wall is a physical wall or a virtual or technological wall remains to be seen. But I do think that it is an element of the discussion about border security that's important. The President's committed to it, and so are we.
John Boehner, the former House Speaker, told our colleague Scott Wapner yesterday that there was actually a chance for comprehensive immigration reform in this Congress with this president. Is there?
Well, I think that we know the system's broken, we know that it needs to be reformed, and we all believe and have said that enforcement comes first. You've got to do the border security piece of it first. But I think that's possible, yeah. I think this is a president who wants to do big things. We are a Congress that is interested in doing big things, and how that, you know, what that looks like remains to be seen. The particulars of it, I think, have not been worked out, but I think it's possible.
Let me ask you about taxes. He's proposed a big tax cut in the individual code. He's proposed big cuts in the corporate code. He's also proposed a very large infrastructure program, which some people in the Congress think can be paid for with international tax reform. Do you envision Congress rapidly doing all of that, or do you see a discrete focus in the beginning on infrastructure, business tax reform, and the individual tax reform goes later?
I've always felt, and this is my own personal preference, I mean, we haven't had this conversation yet with the new team at the White House, nor with our colleagues in the House, but the House of Representatives has a bill that reforms corporate taxes, business taxes, as well as individual. And I think it's hard to do them separately because you have so many pass-through businesses that pay at the individual rate.
That slows everything down, though, right?
Well, it does. It slows it down for sure. But I think if you're thinking about doing something big and you're going to have an infrastructure piece to this, which I think, in order to attract some Democrats, that may be a way of getting there, it's going to take some time to work through it. But there's a lot of good work, foundational work that's been done. The House has led the way on that. We've done a lot of work in the Senate Finance Committee.
Is it unrealistic to think that within the first 100 days we're going to have a tax cut, individual, corporate tax cut, and infrastructure plan passed the Congress?
I would hate to make any predictions about the first 100 days because of the complexity of what we're talking about.
So not
here.
likely for that.
I think that's something that takes a little bit more time to work through. But I think it's very possible, and I think it's necessary. I mean, if we want to get the economy growing and expanding it at a faster rate and creating better paying jobs, we've got to do something about the tax code. It really is antiquated. It is something, I think, that is really harming investment in this country.
Let me ask you one other thing about Obamacare. If you repeal Obamacare, 20 million people who now have health insurance will lose it. How are you going to manage that?
Well, I think first off, the bill that we passed 2 years ago had a transitional period in there, a couple of years, for us to sort of phase these things in. Obviously, you can't overnight make a lot of these changes. I think that if that's the case, we have a lot of ideas about what to replace it with, what a new health care program might look like that would cover those 20 million Americans.
Senator Thune, thanks so much. Guys, I'll toss it back to you.